Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sage 50 Cloud Pastel Accounting topic webinars. Today, we are going to be discussing everything to do with inventory. So I'm going to go through the inventory setup, the tips and tricks around the setup, things to be aware of, what certain things mean, and then we're going to go through a lot of the inventory reporting. So that's normally where a lot of people don't understand how it works, why it works that way. I will also show you where to create your inventory and what the options mean on that screen. This normally takes about an hour. We have started to record the session. And guys, once the session has actually stopped and the recording has buffered and done whatever it needs to do, you will then get a thank you email. And on that thank you email should be a link to this recording. So let's get started. So guys, firstly, you want to make sure that your setup is correct. And to do this, you need to go to Setup, Inventory. Enter your password. And then we want to look at the configuration. So there's certain things that some people might be like, oh, I see that there, but is it different somewhere else? So the first thing that I want to discuss is actually the decimals for quantities, cost price, and selling price. Now, some of you may have had to send your data in for a data fix because you increased your decimals and then you wanted to actually change them back. Guys, this is not the decimals that you increased that you had to actually do that data fix for. So there is another place, just to show you very quickly, where if you increase the decimals, it will require a data fix if you want to go back. And that is on your formats. So if you change the decimals here, this is basically the decimals for your whole system. It will give you a warning. It will ask, are you sure? And if you say yes, it will increase them. Once increased, you cannot decrease. However, your inventory is totally different. You can increase, you can decrease as you need to. So these work separately. And you may need more than 2 decimals for a quantity, especially if we're working in kilograms. You may need 4. You may want your cost price to have more. So these will not require a data fix, but you can adjust them accordingly. I think the most you can, unfortunately, go up to is 4. We have had suggestions to make that more. Yeah, so you can only go up to 4. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have had suggestions that are logged, and if you would like us to add you to that log, just let me know. Then guys, over here you've got your price lists. Now, when you set up company and you use the setup assistant, which you all should do, unless you are a qualified CA and there's a very specific reason that you go start new company and you set it up from scratch. Start new company means you are going to set up all of the entry types, all of the financial categories, everything to do with the program. It is a huge setup, guys. You need to be qualified. You need to know what you're doing. I use something called the Setup Assistants. It's a number of screens that ask you a couple of questions, you answer them, and it then spits out a company that is actually already set up. You can then go and edit that to your specific needs. And part of that would be your price list. Now, a lot of people at times just go next, 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 and then they're like, I don't know where to change the price lists. This is where you come to change those descriptions. So in Express, you only have 3 price lists. In Partner, you have 10. And if you want to change the names, you can come and change them here. Guys, then we've got our limits. So our limits are with regards to inventory. What is the maximum selling price you can have? What is the maximum purchase price? Now, unless you are absolutely certain like that you won't get an error if you put that in, we advise that you leave these as is. Especially given the validity or the basically how volatile the market is at the moment and how things keep going up and down, and it's a little insane. I would definitely keep it like that. But if you change it, that means that if someone tries to go over that maximum, it's not going to allow them. It's going to refuse to let your user actually exceed the maximum selling or the maximum purchase price. You would then need to come here and fix it. Obviously, the number that's in there at the moment is the maximum that it can be. Then, guys, you can set up a minimum gross profit percentage. So this means that when you are actually selling that item, if the selling price falls below that minimum gross profit percentage, it will not let you either enter that selling price on the edit inventory item file, or it will not let you continue with the sale. So again, you can enter minimum gross profit percentage. If you are going to do that, I would strongly advise that you set up your prices on the items themselves. Then you can have a maximum cost difference. Again, I would not suggest that at the moment, but that means that your cost difference can't be, if you have a 10%, it can't be anywhere higher than a 10%. That's what you've said your cost difference can be. It can go between this range and no higher. And then obviously your maximum line discount percentage and your maximum invoice discount percentage. Now, these are quite important to make sure that people don't go above what you are prepared to set up as your discount percentages. So 10, 15, whatever. But here you can set up your settings accordingly. Just be aware that if you change certain things, you may be told, sorry, you can't do this. And as I said, if you are going to use the gross profit percentage, make sure that you are entering the selling, both inclusive, exclusive, on the items in the item file. Don't leave that blank and do it while you're selling and then suddenly, oh, I can't do this. I mean, you've got someone in front of you. Probably. Sorry guys, I just need to advise to please use F5. Okay, then guys, the processing is really important, and a lot of issues that I see coming through support happen because of certain things entered here. So allowing inventory quantities to fall below zero, you can do it. It is fairly dangerous to do, and you need to be very aware that you are doing it. The reason that it's dangerous is for one of two reasons. A lot of the time people will click that. Definitely click this, it'll help. But then I see people who have this ticked. I actually don't like when people have this ticked. It causes a lot of issues. But if you look at this, basically what you've said is make the average cost zero when zero is on hand. You've now allowed your inventory to fall below zero, which means it's made the average cost zero. You are now selling items below zero at zero cost. This is going to have a very negative impact to your financials, and your GP is going to be through the roof. SARS are going to come and go, hey, where's my money? Because you're making 100% gross profit on this item. And you're going to have to do a lot of journals. So definitely please don't tick that if you have, in fact, allowed your quantities to fall below zero. Then if you do allow quantities to fall below zero, something else that you need to bear in mind is that your average cost will freeze. So if it is 50 when it goes below zero, it is going to stay there until it goes back into a positive to rework out the average cost. So again, that may cause a bit of a discrepancy, but at least it's not zero. So that is just something that happens when you allow quantities to fall below zero. Just please bear that in mind. And these are physical items, guys. Service items, I know that it'll show as a negative value. It's a service item. It doesn't count. You can't really count service items. So guys, I do advise that you do let yourself know if your inventory has fallen below zero, because hopefully that'll make you go, okay, I clearly still have stock. My inventory's fallen below zero. I do need to probably either do a stock count, or I need to order more items because I'm now selling below zero. Something's wrong. I either haven't brought in supplier invoices. This should be, especially if we're dealing with physical items, this should be something where you're like, okay, why is this happening? I do know some people sell before the items come in. So they'll sell below zero, then they receive the stock from the supplier, and then you come and you fetch your items or they get delivered to you. That is another reason why, but please don't make the average cost 0 when zero's on hand. Then guys, you can have your sales orders reserve stock. I can't right now, I'm in the demo, sorry, I'd need to be in a clear company. And then you can have your sales orders reserve serial numbers. That's entirely up to you if you want to do that. Obviously, if you are in the business where people place orders and then only do you place the order with the supplier, then you get the stock, then they collect, I would absolutely suggest that you select those. If you are using serial number tracker, definitely have it reserve the serial number. And the reason for that is because you have people who are ordering from you, normally it's first come, first serve. So you don't want someone to suddenly phone you and go, hey, I ordered like 2 weeks ago and I haven't received my stock. In that way, the sales orders reserving the stock means that when you order the stock, you know exactly what you need to order and you can fill those orders. Then guys, check reorder level when processing. Some of you may see this, some of you may not. If you are using partner, you will see this option. If you are not using partner, you do not have a reorder assistance. It is one of the really nice things with the core of partner. So Express baby version, partner full version, same as Windows 10 Home versus Windows 10 Pro. And partner has a reorder assistant that you can set up to manage your stock. So you set up a minimum and a maximum. The moment the minimum is 1 less than what you put in. So if you put it in 5, the moment it goes to 4, when you are processing that invoice, it will warn you, minimum level below stock. And you will then know, okay, I need to do an order. I need to go and place an order with my supplier. I need to do a purchase order. So I think it's a really good thing to have ticked if you are going to actually maximize the reorder assistance. Then guys, warn if preferred supplier is not used. That's totally up to you. If you have a preferred supplier, you can select that and then say, okay, if they're not used, I want to know about it. But you may also be shopping around and that may be a bit annoying. So entirely up to you whether you use that or not. Now, guys, we're coming to the main one, which at times makes me kind of want to pull out my hair a little bit when I see it, because I feel a lot of people don't actually understand what this is for. And a lot of people take this because they go, oh, that's brilliant. Then I'm basically working with my last cost. If I always make the average cost 0 when 0 is on hand. Yeah, you can use it that way, but it's not exactly safe. And again, that's one. If inventory quantities fall below 0, and if you're using point of sale, guys, you can have this unticked. But if someone is holding a can of Coke in front of you, it will put it through and now you've got this ticked. It's going to cause issues. So just bear that in mind. Point of sale ignores whether you have allowed negative quantities or not, because it goes logically. Pastel says there are no quantities, but this person is buying a can of Coke. There must be quantities. I'm going to let it go through. But now it's going to go through at a 0 cost. So basically what that does is the moment something reaches 0, it makes it a 0 cost. I honestly believe that this should only be selected if you are fixing your average cost. So something went wrong in the system, or you captured something wrong, you see that your average costing is wrong, something is wrong in your cost of sales, you're not happy. This is where we might say to you, okay, you have a couple of options. If it is a system glitch, we can have it fixed via a data fix. If it is something where you processed incorrectly, you have an option. You can tick this option, do an inventory journal, take all of your stock out. So you're going to make everything 0. It's going to make your average cost 0. You then need to come in, untick this option and bring all of your stock back in correctly. And that will fix your average costing. That is honestly the only time I believe this should be selected. But guys, you need to understand the ramifications of selecting this. And I've seen it too many times where people just didn't realize that they had ticked it, or when they ticked it, they thought it was a great idea. And this should never be ticked if you're allowing negative quantities or if you have point of sale. Honestly, just don't do it. It's going to be a lot harder to actually fix your cost of sales account and your gross profit and your income statement and your inventory control account than it actually is going to be to fix your average costing. So please be very aware. This is not a, oh yeah, that sounds good. This is like a lot of thought. Okay, this is what it's going to do. These are the pitfalls. Do I want this? Then guys, I want to talk about integration groups because I see many people who have set this up wrong. So in Pastel, we have a lot of lists. We have them here in the inventory group. We have them when you create categories. And a lot of the time, and I understand that you do it this way, but you really don't have to because it honestly makes no sense, actually. It's not how Pastel works. You're trying to make Pastel group stuff where it doesn't work that way. You use a selector to group stuff. People will enter and then they'll skip a few and then they'll enter and they'll enter because they're trying to group things. So maybe this is all food stuff. And I understand in your head this makes absolute sense. Then you skip a few and then you got to start here. And you keep grouping your things and it makes absolute sense to you. But guys, please don't do it. It's actually incredibly dangerous to do, and the reason for that is because of how Pastel works. So Pastel doesn't need you to group your items. Pastel needs you to be consecutive. You need to use them one after the other, especially with inventory. It seems to affect the system a lot worse, where you'll have these breaks, and what Pastel does is you tell it to look at everything and it runs and it goes yes, yes, oh, there are breaks, oh, I'm done. And then you're only going to see some of the groups and not others. Then you try to do food and everything comes through and you're very confused because you're like, I want to see an overall why this is like this. So one after the other, guys, you don't need the spaces. If you have spaces, a way to fix it is just to come and put A's in here. You don't need to set up the rest, just put A's so that the description is actually filled in. So that the system doesn't actually go, oh, I'm done. I've reached the end of my groups. Then, guys, this is obviously, you need to decide whether you want to integrate or not. So you're either using perpetual or perpetual periodic, and basically integrated or not integrated. And integrated means every time you process a transaction, what you are basically going to be doing is you are going to be writing immediately to those accounts. So your inventory is going to be affected, your sales is going to be affected, your cost of sales is going to be affected, your adjustment is going to be affected, your count variance, depending on what you are doing. So if you are bringing inventory in, the inventory control account is affected, or your cost of sales if it's a service item. And it will sit there and your supplier is affected. When you do your invoice, your sales account is affected, your cost of sales is affected, and the inventory control account is affected if we're dealing with actual physical stock. When you make adjustments, this is when you do a count inventory or a stock take, your adjustments or count variance account will be affected depending on what happens, but those will all happen in real time. If you do not integrate this, it means that you will need to go in and you will need to affect these accounts with the inventory. So the sale will write fine, the purchases, when you bring stock in, the purchases will write, and when you sell stuff, the sale will write, but the inventory will not be affected at all. You will have to then go and do stock takes every so often to check what the value of your inventory actually is. So you need to decide what system works for you. Most people, I think, now work on an integrated system, but it is dependent on you. Depending on what you're working with, you can then also, if you are going to use projects, automatically allocate the project at time of sale, which means you do the sale, you put the project in, it will know, okay, this was the cost of sales account and it goes to this project. So that is automatic. Or you can allocate them yourself, which means that when you actually enter the supplier invoice or the purchase, whatever you're doing, you will then select the actual project for that purchase. So this is entirely up to you. if it is automatic, you will not be able to select a project on your supplier documents and journals. If you allocate yourself, you will. So if you've ever struggled with that, this is why. It's either automatic or yourself. And it will, as you can see, basically explain what it's doing. And then, guys, we've got our user-defined fields. So our user-defined fields, you have 3 text fields, 3 numeric fields. You can use this for any other information that you can't enter on the edit inventory item file. If you use bills of material, you will come here to set up your bills of material. I'm not going to go through that today. That is an add-on module. I'll happily go through the add-on module at another time. And other is if you are setting up your defaults. So these are things that you normally enter. So here what you want to do is you want to look at, okay, what is the bulk of my inventory? What group does it normally go to? You know what, actually I have a lot of physical goods, so I wanted to go to this group. Obviously, guys, if you've got a lot of groups, you can set it to none. Oh, sorry, I thought that I could. I'm pretty sure a few years ago I could, my apologies. You would have to select something. So normally inventory group or services. Discount type, now the discount type it's talking about here is when you're actually processing your customer and supplier invoices. Do you want to allow early payment discount or do you want invoice discounts? Now you can choose none on a specific item and go, this item will never be discounted. What that means is that if you process an invoice, sorry guys, I see that there's something, I will show the user-defined field when I set up an item for you. Sorry guys, so just asked about the user-defined fields. Happily I will do that. But over here, you can choose items to not be discounted. What that means is that even if you give an overall discount and you say 10%, it may not be 10% of the total value because there may be items in there that you have said, no discount on this item ever. Even if it is part of an invoice overall discount, I do not want it discounted. So you can do that this way. So you can still offer an invoice discount, but certain items will be excluded. You do that by saying none. You can then go, actually, this item can have an early payment discount, which means if the client pays me within 7 days, this can have that discount on it. Or not. If you are buying from a supplier, you may have similar terms. If you pay them within 7 days, you get the early discounts on it or not. Invoice discount is exactly that. Overall invoice discount, line discount. You can discount this item. It will then calculate off of the cost or both. So actually both apply. I'm good with it. But that's how you manage the discounts and allowing discounted items and non-discounted items when you are processing invoices and you want to give an overall discount or a line discount. And then guys, you've got your units. Each kg, you know, it's basically the unit of measurement. So whatever you have the most. And then you can choose a fixed description and cost. If you select that, it means that you, and again, I will show you this next, edit inventory item file. There will be a place for price lists. You will have entered your price lists in there, and that is set in stone. They cannot be altered, they cannot be changed. Basically, it will go, this is the description, this is the selling price, inclusive, exclusive, depending what you set up on the customer. And that is it. You will not be able to change it. And then you can choose to show the quantity and the units on when processing. Honestly, I would absolutely do that because if you don't, you're only ever going to be able to sell one of everything. And then the change while invoicing means that even though you have entered a description for the item, your price list is set up, you can still alter it. That's where your maximum or minimum GP percentage might come in. You will allow changes, but only within that range. And then, is the inventory item a physical item or a service item? And if physical and you use serial number tracker, for those of you who don't know, that would be for partner only. Is it a serial item. I did see the raised hand. If you have a question right-hand side of the screen, little question mark in a speech bubble. If it is a question that can be answered at the end, I will do so. If it is something that you need me to demonstrate, by all means you can ask and I will happily do so. If it is that you cannot hear, please press F5 or if the screen froze. Okay, guys, then also multi-stores, but I'm not going into multi-stores today either. That is another add-on module for partner, and that is obviously multi-warehousing. So there are add-on modules that affect inventory. Everything about inventory is basically the base. Add-on modules are separate. Then, guys, we've got edit, inventory, item file. So this is what I was talking about. This is where you go to create your items. Now, yes, you can go create an Excel spreadsheet, fill in all of the information and import it. Guys, that will be a totally different webinar on importing master files, but this is generally where you come to create your inventory. And there are very important fields and things that we need to discuss here. So firstly is the code. The code can be (15 characters. Now, guys, something to bear in mind, and I have seen it happen, is where people use special characters. It shouldn't let you, but a code should only be alphanumeric or alphanumeric. So numbers, letters, or a combination. It should never be any different to that. On top of that, in description, this is normally where we find problems, and we are sorry about this. It is because of how Excel actually works. And there are certain measurements or symbols for measurements that are used that make absolute sense, but Pastel actually cannot handle it. So my advice to most people with description is, again, alphanumeric or alphanumeric. Don't use special characters, because often you'll see, for example, and guys, that makes absolute sense. Samsung 72-inch TV. Unfortunately, the double inverted commas that we use to represent inches in Excel, a single inverted comma means skip. So basically what you've said is skip, skip. So if you enter this in column B, what it's going to do is it's going to go Samsung 72, skip, skip, and then none of the other information will make sense in your import files, and it's going to give you a whole lot of errors, and it's going to tell you projects don't exist, and you're going to be very confused. So please don't use the single or the double inverted comma at all. If you have to, you might have to do that, or just IN. So my honest advice is alphanumeric or alpha or numeric. Don't enter any special characters. Yes, a dash is actually fine, as is a full stop, but I've seen that does some weird things in the count inventory at times. So honestly, I'm like, keep it simple and just alphanumeric, done. So I'm being very bland, and I'm just going to call it exactly what the code was. And then, guys, here you're going to have your inventory groups. So this is, again, if you have a whole list where you're going to come, make sure that you select the right one. This is, again, your discount type. So is this an item that can be discounted? Do you want it to be discounted, yes or no? If you do want to use a barcode scanner, you can do so. I don't have any that I can recommend. Apparently, they all work fine. Maybe ask the manufacturer if that does work well with Pastel. And your bin number is your warehousing or bin numbers. You can fill that in, units each. Commodity code and net mass deals with special barcodes, which is part of point of sale. And guys, that is quite challenging to get correct. I would probably have to put a whole session together for that. It's not the easiest. These are the options that we discussed. earlier, fixed description cost, change while invoicing, show quantity and units. And then guys, if you are going to make this a sales commissionable item, so when you set up your customers, you can set up sales reps. And you can create those sales reps, and then you can choose if this is a sales commissionable item. So you may have items that aren't, that you're like, great that you sold that, but no, I'm not going to give you commission for that, but I'll give you commission for these. So you either tick or untick it. If it's unticked, it's no commission will be applied. If you tick it, then commission will be applied, depending on how you set up your commissions. Is it physical? Is it service? Is it serialized? And then guys, generally, the purchases and the sales are set to 15% standard rated, as that's our VAT at the moment. You then need to go to the prices. And this is what I was talking about, especially with that GP percentage. I would absolutely have this filled in. Now, here, if you fill in one, it will fill in the other. So, for example, if I go 200, you'll see it'll automatically fill in based on the tax that you put here. So please make sure that you have in fact set it correctly. And you'll see that it goes round and down, and this is just how it works. And it fills in the inclusive. Likewise, I can fill in my inclusive and it will work out my exclusive. You can also enter future prices if you so wish. So if you know that you are going to increase your prices in future, you can enter those and you can run the prices changeover when you're ready. And if you are having a sale, you can actually come in here and enter your exclusive or inclusive and the dates that it applies to. So if you know in a month you're going to have a sale, you can go, okay, this is actually going to be on sale for 135. Oh dear, which selling price did I change? Oh, that's because it's wholesale. And the date, for example. And the moment that hits, that is the price that will be on your system. And then once it expires, it will be expired. So you can do that per item. Your reorder, now this is only available to your partner, and this is where you can enter, for example, 5 and 15. Now you can order more than 15. If you run the reorder assistant though, it will only order up to the maximum. If you're entering the figures yourself, you can totally go over that. You will only be warned if you selected that option in the setup and it gets to 4. So it is 1 less than the minimum. It's not going to, the moment you hit the minimum, go 5, 5, oh yes, you've hit 5. It's going to wait until you 1 less. Okay, guys, I'll explain how GP is set shortly. I did show you where to set the minimum GP percentage you can use. But when you are doing your prices, you can see your GP amount. So if you set that, I'll go back there now. If you when to set up inventory and you set minimum GP percentage, it will not allow you to enter figures less than the minimum, but it will tell you what the amount is. It will also show you what the GP percentage is. So obviously my GP percentage is 100%. I haven't received any stock for this item yet. So it's going to show me 100%. But this is where you can see it on your prices. So you can work it out, and I need to check on the documents. It might be from a few years ago, so it might still show 2014. I keep meaning to update it. I've run this webinar for the last 5 years, guys. But there I do explain how GP and I show you how all of the inventory formulas actually work in Pastel. So I will show that at the end, but this is where you would go and you set up your minimum by setup inventory and in your limits. Then guys, your reorder, this is where you can set a preferred supplier if you like. The only thing that I really love here, other than the minimum and the maximum, is the fact that you can enter your supplier's inventory code. So if you want your own inventory code and your supplier has a different inventory code, you can actually enter that here, and then in Forms Designer on your purchase orders, you can change the code field to the supplier's inventory code. And when you actually, I do see the hand, you're welcome to ask your question. And when you then enter your code, it will change it to the supplier's code, and you can then just literally fax that purchase order through to them. Instead of you doing a purchase order, then sitting with the purchase order and like emailing them and like trying to work out which code was theirs for your items. I just thought that's really nice. And then here you can obviously see on hand, on sales order, on purchase order, so that you also have a good overview. So this is how you set up your reorder assistant. You do not have to set up a preferred supplier, and you do not have to set up a preferred supplier code or even the inventory codes. You can just set up maximum, minimum. Then guys, we've got our user-defined fields. Now, this is where I think that Sage Business Cloud Accounting actually beats Pastel accounting quite a lot, because in Sage Business Cloud Accounting, it gives you a number of user-defined fields, but you can actually go and change the headings, and those headings will show on your actual master files. Whereas with ours, it doesn't do that. Even if you go and say, okay, this is, someone give me an example of what a user-defined field would be for inventory. Sorry, I've gone completely blank. I know for customers because I often use Discovery Aid or Medical Aid, so Discovery. Yes, you can print a reorder report. I'll show you that in the actual reports, how it all fits together. But yeah, so guys, you've got text fields and you've got number fields. And you can use these. In all honesty, it's not going to help you pull reports at all. It's just extra fields that you can enter onto the invoice. So maybe you are a car manufacturer or color. Thank you so much. Brilliant. That was the one I normally use. I'm sorry, I went totally blank there. You may want to say user-defined field is color. And you've got, you know, you're selling t-shirts and this is blue. And the other one is black and it's got a slightly different code. So you can absolutely do that and enter that user-defined field onto your actual, when you are processing, you'll be able to see, oh, this is the blue one, this is the black one. In terms of numbers, maybe it's additional charges, customs, VAT, whatever. But it's literally there for you just so that when you're processing, you actually know what you're entering, and it's information that I will do the reorder again now that is not covered in the details, the pricing at all. So it's extra information that you need. For example, in Express, you could use the user-defined fields as your reorder. The only difference is there is no report. So you may want to go, you know, for example, popular item, order monthly, you know, something that just gives you information. Honestly, I would put that in notes rather, but I'm just trying to, honestly, to be honest, guys, the user-defined fields in Pastel I find were a great idea, but it wasn't really well integrated. You can use them, there are uses for them, but they're not as useful as you might think. If you do find them very useful, I take it back, but a lot of people that I've worked with, we've tried things and it hasn't always worked the way that we wanted it to, but they are there for that kind of information. And then when processing, you can go and check the user-defined field and enter that. For example, the shirt being blue. Then guys, reorder. Preferred supplier, you enter your supplier code here if you are going to use a preferred supplier. This does help with the reorder assistance. It's very difficult if there is no supplier set up. because when you use the reorder assistant, normally you will say, hi, I need to reorder stuff and I need to reorder it from the following suppliers. And if no supplier is set up, the reorder assistant will not work. So for the reorder assistant, you do have to have a supplier or a number of suppliers, and then you can select which one you prefer, but you do not need to enter the supplier inventory code. So you do not need to use it for inventory, so you do not need to enter this. I would advise doing this if you are going to use the reorder assistant. If, however, you just want to use the reorder report and enter your purchase orders yourself, this is not necessary. And then you do need to enter a minimum and a maximum. In order for that message to tell you you need to reorder to come through, it needs to be one less than the minimum. So if you want to be told at 5 that you need to reorder, you would then need to enter 6. And if you use the reorder assistant, it will only order up until the maximum. So if you say the maximum I want is 15, it's only going to order 15. But if you do the purchase order yourself and you go, actually, I'm going to order 30 because I think this is selling really quickly, you can do that yourself, but the reorder assistant will only order up to the maximum. You would then need to come in and change that. And then it will just show you your current quantities. Guys, then you've got your activity. Your activity is exactly what it says. It's going to show you your purchase quantities, your adjustment quantities. So these are your stock takes, your sales quantities, your quantities on hand, your average cost, and the sales value. If you see unposted, but it is the same figure all the way down, do not worry. If, however, you see unposted and it differs, so you see quantity on hand and it's going 40, 40, 40, 40, 10, it means that you've got an open batch. It has not been updated and you need to go and find it. On occasion, you will have updated the batch. This will still show. In this regard, you just need to run the data integrity. I will show you now what I mean by that, but this is only if all of your batches are updated. Normally this only shows if you've got unposted batches, so unupdated batches, customer invoices, supplier invoices. That's when it's going to show an unposted quantity, inventory journal, stock take maybe, and that's when you need to then go and update those. If everything has updated, and it is showing a different figure. So it's got 40 all the way down, but it doesn't have 40 for unposted. It's got a different figure. Then what you're going to do, I'm just going to save that very quickly, is you're going to go to File, Data Integrity, Next, and you're going to go Verify the Data Only, and you're going to say Process. It'll tell you if there are any errors. As long as there are no errors, again, File, Data Integrity, and you're going to rebuild batch quantities. Now, guys, you could just do the rebuild batch quantities. I like to double check both, just because at times when the system is showing you something funny, there might be something else wrong. So I often do the integrity check. If you feel, okay, my data is huge, and it takes 4 hours to run that verified data, I'm just going to rebuild the batch quantities. That is fine. It should clear that issue. If it doesn't, though, you may have to do the data integrity check as well as run a stock fix. Guys, I just want to check if there are any questions that need answering now, because a few people needed me to go back over things. Reorder is for reordering inventory. Yes. And for showing the supplier, yes. That's what the reorder assistant is, but it's only available in partner. It is not available in express, so you will not see it. So guys, then if we just go back into edit inventory item file, just the last two, you've got your notes and your picture, and if you have serial numbers, your serial numbers. So notes are things like maybe this is really popular, or supplier discontinuing. whatever makes sense here, you can then enter your notes, and then you can add a picture. Now, to add a picture is going to make your data set quite a lot bigger, so please bear this in mind. And guys, there are only a number of files that are agreed on. It is your bitmap files and your JPEGs. If they're in any other format, it's not going to allow you to select that picture. Honestly, I would just keep it as JPEGs. Even your logo, I would leave as a JPEG. And you can add them, but decide if it is necessary to add. Obviously, this is so that people know what they're seeing when they're processing. It's not so much for your customers as it is for you. So that's creating items, and that's what you need to know about creating items. Then guys, with inventory, you also have adjust selling prices. So as I said, you do have your categories. Your categories, just so you know, are not the same as your integration. A lot of people make this mistake where they go, oh, I'm going to do my categories, and they also do the skip thing. You don't need to. Yes, your category can be helpful, your category can help, but your integration groups are more helpful, and they allow you to do a lot more. So the difference between categories and integration groups is a category is merely just how you're categorizing the items. This is food, this is drink, this is snacks. However, the integration group is actually linking to your GL. And I did not cover it specifically because I wanted to show the difference. Your category is grouping stuff. Your integration groups allows you to actually go and select very specific accounts. So you can have your GL as simple or as detailed as you like, because you can go and you can create sub-accounts for your sales account, for your cost of sales account, for your inventory control account. And when you do your integration groups, you can go, for example, food or main meal. And you can then go, that goes to sales 001. And that is on my sales account for food. Or you might break up your company per location. You may have Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town. And you will then break up your sales to have a Joburg sales account, a Joburg cost of sales account, a Joburg inventory account. And you can then set these up here. So this is the default tax type. So I'm saying 15, which is my 15%. And then here I can go, okay, this is my Joburg sales account. Your adjustments, you can decide if you do want to have sub-accounts for those or not. So it's how detailed you want to get. And this will actually allow you, when you drill down on your trial balance, to be able to drill down either just for a specific location or to drill down as a whole for the company. So guys, your integration groups and thinking how this works is really important. As you can see, categories are great. Okay, I'm grouping stuff, that's it. Your integration groups can drill down and give you such detailed financial information. So you need to know what you're doing here. You need to decide, do I want this to be detailed? Do I want it to be simple? Do I want to be able to drill down to a specific province or a specific country or a specific city even? Okay, yeah, I've got Joburg, but I've got 5 stores in Joburg. I want to know how each store is doing. Obviously, yes, there's also multi-stores for that, but your multi-stores, when I do multi-stores, we'll get into it again. It's a bit of a different setup to your financials. So you need to sit and decide, how intense do I want my financials to be? How detailed do I want them to be? Do I need a lot of information? Do I need a little bit of information? Remember, if you have sub-accounts, you can always only pull your financials against main accounts, which is, this is my company overview. But with your sub-accounts, you can drill down to specific sub-accounts and have a look. Is this store doing well? Is this location doing well? Is this product doing well? Or this product range doing well? If it's not, that can give you an idea of, do I want to continue doing this? So that's the difference between categories and integration groups. Now guys, obviously processing, it's your normal processing. Hopefully I don't have to go through that, but what I do want to go through are the inventory reports. So here you can see you've got your reorder report. So yes, there is a reorder report. Obviously if there's an open batch, it'll tell you because it will not be included in this. No open batches are ever included. Don't worry about that. I thought that I had actually restored my backup before I broke it for year end. Clearly not. So guys, here again, you can go and have a look. In my case, I do have a to store and a from store. If you don't have multi-stores, you will not have that. You can then choose your inventory sort order. So this depends on how you want to sort your items. Do you want to sort them by code, description, category, bin, or barcode? And this is entirely up to you. Here again, this is where category counts. So guys, group counts in very much a financial setting. Your financials are very important, and your valuation can be pulled by group. So someone did say, oh, but this doesn't have group, that's why category. Guys, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use category. By all means, use your categories, group your stuff. The point is they hold two very different functions. One is for financial information and for how much detail you want in that financial information, and one is for grouping. So please don't be confused that I'm going one is better than the other. I just want you to understand the difference between the two. Yes, you can also use your integration groups as a grouping structure. But yes, your categories are basically your grouping, and your integration groups are actually for your financial data and how much detail you want. And it is very, very important that you get that correct, because you have an accounting system for the financial information it can give you. If you don't set that up correctly, Pastel's not going to tell you that you haven't set it up correctly. Please understand that. Pastel is software. If you don't set your software up properly and you're going to put rubbish in, you're going to get rubbish out. The software isn't at fault. The software isn't rubbish. You haven't set it up correctly. That's what these sessions are here for, to try to like, hey, these are what they do. So I do apologize if I made it seem like categories weren't important. They absolutely are. It's just that the two hold two very different functions. So guys, let me know if that makes sense. It was just a comment, and it makes sense that maybe I didn't explain that properly. So thank you for that. No, there are certain things that you can't go via the group. Absolutely. And then your categories are key, because that's how you want to group your things. It's just categories have no bearing on your financials really, whereas your integration groups have a huge bearing on your financials. So you then choose how you want to sort this report. Then you've got your start and end. Now guys, if we look here, you'll notice that depending on what you select depends on how you will select your start and end. You'll either have a drop-down list or you'll have a zoom. So just bear that in mind, and with your zoom, you can select a range. Now, you cannot select like you can in Excel, where you kind of hold control and go, I want this one, that one. It is specifically a range. So it's from there to here. If you want everything, you leave the top blank and the end filled with Zs. With regards to one of your drop downs, so like your category, we advise that if you want everything, you select the very top one and then you select the very end one. Obviously, if you want a specific category, then you only select that category. And then it's for which period. So where do you want to see this for? And then do you want to show the supplier details, yes or no, for which suppliers? So guys, these are all just filters. And honestly, if you read it, it should make sense. If it doesn't, fine. Include 0 minimum reorder items. Now, this is if there's a 0 minimum. Do you want to see those? Don't you? If you've gone through all the trouble of setting up your reorder, you probably don't, because you set it properly so that you actually don't need to have 0 items in there. Everything should be set up. But if you just read the options, you can see what you want to include and not. I generally do not include 0 reorder items because I want to see my reorder report. This is not a quantity report. Include sales order quantities. That's a very good thing to include if you do have things on a sales order and you're about to do a reorder. You need to know how much you need to reorder. It's why I also advise that it's also a really good idea for you if you are going to use the reorder assistant to allow sales orders to reserve stock. And then do you want to include 0 quantities to order items? So these are the items have 0. Do you want to include them? I generally don't include those 2 because you should have set up your reorder correctly. And then do you want unblocked, blocked, or both? Now, guys, you don't want to reorder blocked items. If an item's blocked, it means that you're no longer selling it. So in this case, I say unblocked only. But if an item doesn't show, go and check if you accidentally blocked it. If we say OK, it should then give us a list. And here you can see it's giving me my code. It's telling me my category. It's giving me my description. It's telling me the store, the quantity on hand, sales orders, purchase orders, the minimum and the maximum. And I can then either take this and go and create a purchase order now. So this is a really nice report to go and create. And that's why I said include the sales orders, because it does help. Or I can run the reorder assistant. Then guys, I've been asked to just go through the difference between the categories and the groups again. So your category is a grouping system. So a lot of people with integration groups goes, but it's called groups. No guys, it's called integration groups. And your categories are exactly that. They're a grouping mechanism that you can use to group your items. So you come in here and you set up your groups, for example. So here they've just set up exactly what's in your integration group. Services, inventory, goods. You can set up again. You can go, okay, I want main meals, and I want sandwiches, etc. Then when you are creating your items, you will go and you will put them to that category. So I'll go, well, that's the main meal. And everything that I've put to a main meal, if I then pull against that category, I'll be able to see here all my main meals are, how they're doing. Great. But from a financial standpoint, I may not be able to see that on my actual financials. Because if I'm viewing a trial balance, it's not asking me about my inventory categories, my inventory groups. It's not asking me anything. It's asking me, hey, where do you want to print to? There are a number of options: screen, printer, Excel, Word, HTML, email, ASCII, which is a TXT file. Not the best to analyze information, in my opinion, and PDF. What do I want to print to? Normally I print to screen first, check everything's good, then I'm probably print to a PDF. Or you can email this to someone, or you can go into Excel if you need to change things. Do I want to use sub-accounts? Yes or no. Do I want to see my 0 items? Yes or no. Do I want to print this year or last year? What are my periods start and end? Do I want to see a comparative? Last year, budget, external reference. Do I want to include my opening balances? Guys, often if you are pulling a TB, especially if you run year end and you freak out because you go, there's something wrong, my stuff is wrong, it's this little tick, FYI, just a very quick tip. It's honestly that tick, and guys, that is a question we get so much. So if it's ever happened to you, I've done it before. I think everyone in support has done it before. Don't even stress, just remember to include opening balances, otherwise things won't look right. Home currency, there's nothing here to show you, but if you've set up your groups, correctly and you use sub-accounts, that is where your integration groups are so important. So yes, your categories group your information, and honestly, when you're pulling certain reports, those categories are very important to group it. But this is your integration to your general ledger. So this is where I was talking about you may have different locations, or you may want to use your categories here to see, okay, I've got meat, I've got vegetables. Sorry, I'm on the food kick. It's just often something I use. But meat, vegetables, chips, sweets, you may categorize them here because you want to see how are they selling, how much are they costing me, is it worth me doing this? You may have a clothing store. So you may have, for example, the different brands as your categories, and you may decide to put the different brands here, or you may decide to put the different clothing types here instead, like t-shirts and pants and dresses, and then link them to their own sales accounts, cost of sales accounts, inventory accounts, so that when you pull your financial report, your trial balance, your income statement, your balance sheet, you can at a glance go, oh, meat's gotten very expensive and it's not selling very well. Or, you know, oh, this brand of clothing, that's really doing badly. Maybe we need to look at discontinuing that. So it will give you the integration groups, give you the financial aspect. Categories, just group them into what they are. So when you run reports, you can pull just based on that category. And hopefully that makes more sense, guys. Please let me know. Okay, then guys, so we've got our reorder report. We've then got our activity summary. Now your activity summary is basically the activity exactly as you saw it. So you'll select your filters accordingly. Guys, if anyone is confused with filters, let me know. We're already at 11 and I'm not even halfway through the reports. But basically, it's exactly what you saw. It's just for whatever items you selected. So it's going to show you your purchases, your adjustments, your sales on hand. So here you see the 26 and you see I'm posted 26. That's totally fine. If that was a 15, I would either have an open batch or I would need to go and rebuild my batch quantities. And that's all that this is. It's just a ginormous report instead of one by one on the inventory. Then guys, you've got your history. Now your history is really important. You've got your item sequence or your chronological per item. Now an item sequence is a very quick report to kind of view certain things that have happened with your inventory. So it's more the transaction types that are really important. And you need to check your tax invoice or your credit note, debit note, but here you can see exactly what's happened with an item. So invariably, if your average costing is wrong, we advise that you run your inventory history per item sequence. Now the item sequence does allow you to select more than one item. So maybe you see that your cost of sales looks really strange and you're not sure because you're like, okay, items haven't written to the cost of sales. I don't know which ones. In this case, running it for everything would probably be a good idea. Things to bear in mind when you do this is that if you are using multi-store, you can only run it per store. And here again, you can choose inventory group or category. But then if nothing is running, it could be because you haven't selected everything. So with the drop down, guys, remember, you've got to select the very first, which is none, and all the way to the very last. Otherwise, you may get a report that goes, we can't find this information. That's very important. This is also a date-driven report, not a period-driven report. Very, very important distinction. And we can say, okay, in this way, we can very quickly have a look and see, okay, is there anything really strange here? I mean, here, I have a goods received note for an item that normally costs 2,240 Rand, but now it's come in at 952. That could have a drastic impact on my average costing. I can now see that and go, ooh, that's where I went wrong. Okay, how am I going to fix this? Do a return and debit and redo the goods received note, the supplier invoice, etc., so that my average costing is corrected. But this is how you can see it. So you can try to have a look and see, okay, which items look weird, what's happened. Sometimes it is not your fault. You'll see a really long number here. For some reason, it's taken the barcode as the actual item code, or something has gone really weird, or there'll be no reason. It'll have this really ridiculous figure of, say, 50,000 as an average cost, and you bring it in at 10 Rand, and you look through this and you go, but there's no reason. But this is where you would start if you see your cost of sales is meager. You would run this report. The other report, which is your inventory history by chronological per item. Guys, this is a report that we normally run. It's specific to an inventory item, and often we will run this if normally we have people who will come in and they'll go, well, my inventory control account and my inventory valuation is really, really out, and it's out by like millions, not a little bit. Because guys, that report is going to differ. It's not going to be the same. Because of the fluctuation in average cost. When you bring an item in, it's at the actual cost of the item. But when you sell the item, it's at average, actual versus average. It's just how it works. So there are going to be slight variances, but there shouldn't be millions. When that happens, or when you have a specific item that is really strange, we come in here, and the reason is we can see that you sold this item, which is why it's a zero cost, for example, if there was, before you even brought it in via a goods received note. So in that way, we can say to you, look, it's the data fix isn't working maybe, or it's not a data fix. And the reason it's not a data fix is because you say that it wrote a zero cost to your cost of sales, but you sold the item before you brought it in. So that's why I did that. And as you can see, not on this item, but it's all zero. So you can either do a journal now, or we'll explain how to fix it. So that's what the chronological is there for, to figure out why a specific item is acting the way that it is. Then guys, your serial number, these are just your listings and your history. It does show in the inventory reports, but again, it's an add-on module. I will do serial numbers at some point, and then we will go over the reporting. Your quantities report is a really important report, and most people will run this report every month. Go and have a look at their quantities. You will select your different filters, such as where do you want to print to? If you do have multi-stores, from which stores? How do you want to sort? And again, guys, here's where your category is really important. Again, you know, I want my categories like my groups. This is how I can do it. My start and end, again, depending, could be a magnifying glass where you select to range, or it could be a list. Print descriptions. Do you want to see them? Yes or no? Totally up to you. For which period do you want to see? Do you want to show the zero quantity items? Now, guys, if you know that you have items that have a quantity that shouldn't be zero, I strongly advise that this is included here, because this is normally you double checking and going, okay, these are my items. This is what Express uses to actually do their reorder as well. But yes, include the zero quantity items and then blocked or unblocked. Now, guys, again, you shouldn't really be ordering for blocked items, only unblocked, because you blocked the items for a reason. You no longer want to use them. But if there's an item missing, obviously go have a look and see if it's blocked. And then we say, okay, and here we can have a look and see, okay, this is obviously for all of my stores so that you can see that, but I can have a look, I can see what's happening, I can go and then decide what I'm doing. Now, guys, often people will be here, and sometimes when you're processing to a customer, you will be told that you don't have enough quantities on hand. You'll come to the quantity report and you go, oh, but I do, I have 38 on hand. Guys, earlier I used a very important term. Don't worry, I will use it again. I specified on the one report that it was date driven. This is period driven, which means it will include the quantity up until the very last date. Now, if you are processing on the 15th of March and you come in here and you look and you go, oh shoot, I only did that on the 31st. That is why you are getting the message. The quantity report, period driven, it includes all the quantities for that period. But when you are processing to your customer, you select a specific date. If that quantity only came into the system after the date you are processing, you will get that message. So you normally need to drill down onto the actual line and then check, okay, when did I bring this in? Like, I'm pretty sure I have stock. Why is it giving me that message? Okay, it was on the 31st. I'm trying to process this for the 15th of March, and I can't because it was the 31st of March that I brought it in. So guys, that's the difference between a period and a date-driven report. It's also how you find out of period processing, not using this report, but date versus period driven reports. Then we have our slow moving. Now, guys, this can be really useful if you do want to see, especially, let's say, clothing, something's moving really slowly. Do I want to use this again? You can either use a fixed quantity method, which means anything below that have sold less than 4. In this period, I want to see that because then I need to discontinue this. I mean, especially if it's a whole year, yeah, you probably do, but that's how you can use that quantity. Anything lower than this, I think that we need to say no to, or you can use a date-driven report where you go, nothing sold from this date, that's my slow moving. Then either it's something you're going to keep an eye on, so you're going to go, I haven't sold it since X. And this report has multiple reasons. Okay, nothing's gonna, it's the demo. But basically, guys, you're choosing here. You can use it to either see what's slow moving. Okay, I need to keep an eye on this. And once I've kept an eye on this, I need to check, does it pick up? Maybe it's something like with food. Maybe it's actually seasonal. You know, salads don't do very well in winter, but soup does. So I'm not going to really do salads in winter anymore. I'm going to do soup. But then again, maybe you use it to literally just go, I'm not selling this anymore. I'm not going to buy this anymore because I'm not selling it. Because the whole point is to make a profit. Yeah, what causes differences between inventory valuation report and control, I'll discuss as I get to the end, but you're probably going to need to go through support for proper actual assistance. That is quite a big one, to be honest. I do know why, but it's quite a big thing to go through in itself. Then, guys, we've got our slow moving. So as I said, you can use it either to keep an eye on things, see if it's maybe a seasonal thing. You know, obviously t-shirts might sell a lot less during winter than they do during summer. So you can use it to see what's seasonal, where stuff's a lot, where stuff's a little, or this is just a really bad selling item. So that's what your slow moving is for. Guys, then you have your inventory valuation. This is to convert your inventory into money, to show you this is the actual financial quantity or monetary value of the quantity you have on your stock floor. So inventory is always an asset. And here you can actually see, okay, this is my value. This is how much inventory I currently have. And that is seen as an asset because you're going to convert this into sales. Now, as I said, often this report might not tie up to your inventory control account. If it is by a little bit, that is because of the logic behind you're bringing it in at the actual cost. It doesn't maybe cost you 500 Rand to bring in that skirt. It absolutely, that's what you pay the supplier. But when you sell it, it works out the average cost, and the average cost might be 550. There is a 50 Rand difference between when it came into the system to when it went out of the system. So you're not going to find that the two reports match up entirely. Depending on how much you sell, the quantity you sell, that difference could be a lot bigger. But there are specific reasons why these two differ, and I will go through them at the end. Now, guys, your valuation, as I said, is just specifically for you to know the monetary value of the quantity that you have. Again, you've got your different filters. And guys, bearing in mind, sometimes here, if you say unblocked only, that could be why. So please select both. If you've blocked items through the year, technically you shouldn't have that stock on hand, but maybe you do. You've decided not to sell it anymore, but it is still part of your assets. You then need to do a stock take to take it out. So this report is also very important for you to have a look at and see, should that be there, shouldn't that be there? Should that actually be zero, shouldn't it be zero? What are you doing with this inventory? So this is where you go through. And then guys, yes, you can use last cost. Sometimes it'll change the figure a bit, and it'll look at what the last cost was as opposed to the average cost. It's totally up to you, and include unposted quantities. Again, you may wish to do that. Otherwise, you may see huge discrepancies. Then you've got your print labels. So guys, this is basically your, you can print barcodes and you can choose to print labels, and you can do this from within the system. For example, range on GRNs, for example, in which case you can select these are the GRNs that came in, and I want to print X amount, and I want to select the label form. And again, guys, this is more forms designer training, or specifically how to print barcodes, because that in itself, as I said, there's a hell of a lot with inventory, but this in itself, you need to know what form. So it's normally iLab, and on how to customize this, it's entirely using Forms Designer. So iLab Bark, it depends what barcode scanner you have, what it can read. You need to make sure in Forms Designer that is the type of barcode you've set up. You would then open this and you would tell it from which store to store. You don't have to set up a barcode. You can choose to use the item code as the barcode, and then you can click on OK. If you have issues with this, I do strongly advise that you speak to support. So guys, often that in itself does cause a few issues. Forms Designer itself, I've run webinars on Forms Designer, and I've been told multiple times I make it look very, very easy, and it is very, very difficult. For that, I do apologize. I've been with the system for 12 years. So as I said, there's certain things I'm just going through very quickly. But your labels are basically exactly that. It's printing your inventory barcodes or printing your serial numbers. Then guys, your listings, again, are exactly that. You can list your items, your groups, your categories, your stores, or your preferred supplier listings. It'll just give you a list with a bit of information about that listing. You then have your inventory store cross tab. This is to do with multi-stores, and this is to do with your inter-store transfers. It's a very important thing with multi-stores. It's a report that you will absolutely use a lot if you're using multi-stores. Guys, with your printing labels using Microsoft Word, I actually don't advise it. I advise that you just print straight out of Pastel. This in itself becomes a nightmare. Normally we need to log in, we need to fiddle with things, we need to try to get it to work. If you do know how to get this to work brilliantly, please let me know. If you are a business partner, I will let the group know. They are more than welcome to get hold of you. And then obviously you have your Instastore transfer tab as well. So guys, the main ones that most people will have is activity summary, history, quantities, and inventory valuation. I can't remember if Express has slow moving. I'm so sorry. Your printing labels and your listings. And guys, honestly, the ones that we use the most in support to help you are your activity summary, your history, your quantities, and your valuation. Those are the most important. Your valuation, I would run once a month to make sure that my inventory is looking good, that everything's okay, compare it to my control, make sure that variance isn't too great, make sure that I don't have any of the issues for the variance. And yes, I will still answer that question, don't worry. Your activity summary is just to check your activity summary and make sure that it's okay. If these two differ, you've probably deleted history. You can run a stock fix to fix that, but generally we spend a lot of time using these reports to help you. This report as well should be a monthly report that you should be looking at to make sure that your quantities are okay. And then guys, the slow moving is entirely up to you. I probably would run that every season just to check the seasonal changes, but you can also run that monthly to make sure that you're not buying something unnecessary. Now guys, I've had quite a few questions on inventory. So I'm going to have to go up. Okay, I think, no, there's still a lot of questions. So guys, just give me a second. Can you print the reorder report? Yes, you can. Oh guys, to run the reorder, I did just want to show you that because it's really, really nice. So basically, you're going to come into your purchase orders because it is a purchase order that you need to run. You're then going to go to batch reorder assistant. So while yes, you can obviously print the reorder report, you can also just, if you've set it up correctly with suppliers, you can run the reorder assistant, select your from and to store, select your inventory range, include your sales orders, select your date, select the date that you want to run this at, so wherever. And then it's going to tell you, okay, these are the items that we see. This is what is short based on sales orders, based on your minimum, based on your maximum. This is what you need. And then you can literally go process and it will go and create either one or all of those purchase orders for you, for that specific, for those suppliers. So that is the reorder assistance. It's just a really quick way, or you can just use the report and do it manually yourself. It's entirely up to you. So that was on, can you print that report? Absolutely. You can also run the reorder assistant. You can also absolutely use the user-defined fields for different sizes. Thank you for that. As you can see, I don't actually use the, well, I don't actually use Pastel. I just fix the errors that come through support when the agents are struggling. So I don't always use the user-defined fields. So for customers and suppliers, I'm quite good at them. For inventory, I just do a complete blank. Again, my apologies for that, guys. When pulling an item-based price list report, there's no option. Yes, thank you. That was where I just specified the difference between category and groups. Thank you so much for that comment, because obviously it just helped to reiterate that. And any specific reason for this? I'm actually not sure. That's actually an incredibly good question. So guys, on an item-based price list report, There's no option to sort by the group. And yeah, I do get your point. I don't know if there's any specific reason, but I can definitely take it back to development and get an answer for you and email that through to you. It's probably they didn't think of it. I'll definitely also log it as a suggestion. Okay, so guys, here is the one that a few people have asked. When I print my inventory valuation report and my control account, I get different values. What causes the differences? Okay, again, guys, this might be really old. I do believe that I put it on the KB, but I could be wrong. Okay, so guys, these are the inventory calculations in Pastel, and in order to understand that question, you actually need to understand the calculations. So the way that Pastel works things out, and this is actually how most accounting programs work things out, is your GP is the sales minus the cost of sales. That's what your GP is. And to work out the percentage is basically you take your cost of sales divided by your sales and times by 100. So this is basically how the GP percentage and amount works. Then your markup is your sales minus your cost. So you've got a markup percentage, and your markup amount divided by your cost is a percentage. So you will basically have your markup, or sorry, your sales minus your cost, which equals your actual profit. So your profit, your GP, gross profit, is 800. Then you take this 800 and you divide it by your cost, which gives you your markup, times 100. So that's your markup percentage. And guys, then we get to the big one, which is your average costing. So this is the one that is really important to understand, especially to answer this question. So Pastel uses average cost. Obviously, when you are buying at the actual cost. I mean, you can't buy at an average. You can't tell your supplier, well, sorry, my average purchase price says X. They tell you this is how much you're going to pay me per item, and you go, thank you very much, and that's what you enter on your purchase order or your supplier invoice or your goods received note. But how it works is you will buy 10 pairs of shoes at 150 Rand each. So you times it. You go 10 times 150 is 1,500. That is your valuation right there. That is the amount of stock in terms of money. You then sell 3 pairs at 200. We put our profit on that. Now, the cost of sale is 450 to sell those shoes. You then buy another 5 pairs of shoes at 200. So 200 times 5 is 1,000. But now you've got to work out the average cost, because now you've got a whole lot of equations. So 10 times 150 minus 3 times 150 plus 5 times 200 divided by the quantity on hand. So this is your first equation, your 1,500. This is your next equation, your 450, because you need to minus that 450 from that 1,500. But you also need to minus the quantity. So you can see here that we do all of the main values plus the 1,000, but then which equals our 2,050, but then we need to minus our quantities as well. So 10 minus 3 plus 5, which is 12. And our new valuation is 170. So that is a bit of a difference from 200. That's why I say on your inventory control, you will see the actual purchase price of 200. But then on your inventory valuation, it uses average cost. Even if you use the last cost, if you've been processing for an entire year, your cost has varied throughout the year. So it's not just the difference between two and you can go use last cost. Oh, thank goodness, it's fine. So guys, you probably are going to find small variances depending on how much turnover you have. If you have millions of turnover, that might be tens of thousands of variance in terms of rand value. Now, there are specific reasons this can happen where it's not normal and you absolutely need to see why. One is additional cost invoices for suppliers. If you process an additional cost invoice for your supplier and you return that additional or you return the goods. So you process that additional cost. You've done your supplier invoice, you do your additional cost invoice, and you put it, you've entered it, and now you need to return items. Guess what does not get returned? Additional costs. So you are going to find a huge variance, and I know this because I had to audit 3 years of books for a client once, which I will never do again. But I had to do that because honestly, guys, they had a lot of additional cost invoices and they returned items, but those additional costs were never returned. And that's something that you need to bear in mind. You then need to do a journal, or you are going to need to go and have a look at, oh, I have a whole lot of additional costs. I returned this, but those additional costs are still sitting there. That can really add up. That is the one. The next is that wonderful little tick of make average cost 0 when zeros on hand and selling below cost. That will screw up everything. Please don't do that. So that is a major thing. If you have point of sale, remember I said please don't tick that 0 option, because again, that can really mess up a lot of things. Reason being, especially if you sell below cost, or sorry, you sell below 0, is your average cost doesn't fluctuate anymore. So if, for example, I sold all 10 pairs of shoes, or I sold 20 pairs of shoes and my average cost was 150, and then I bought 3 pairs of shoes, I'm already 10 pairs of shoes below in negative quantities. So even if I buy 3 pairs of shoes at 200, it's not going to update to the 170. It's going to keep it at 150. In order for your average costing to update, you have to be in a positive. So selling in negative very, very badly affects your average costing because it is frozen. So that is a reason why. I'm trying to think. There were other reasons. I've got it on I had it on an email. But guys, there are a number of reasons why it can happen, and there are things you need to look out for. The other is using that chronological sequence where you sell the stock on the invoice before you receive it. That has a very big impact. Actually, having negative quantities has a big impact. So there are various reasons. Guys, my honest advice to you is that you need to get hold of support. You need to say to them, hi, I've got this problem. Can you help me? And how do I resolve it? The way that you're going to resolve it is actually by ticking the option, make average cost 0 when zeros on hand. Make all of your items 0. So you're going to do an inventory journal, make it all 0, even if they're negative or positive, everything 0. You're going to untick that option and you're going to have to bring your stock in. On that was the other reason. The other reason that this happens is when you go edit inventory item file and you've selected make average cost 0 when zeros on hand, the last unit here, you see a 0, but it'll also make average cost 0. Now, if you have 0 items, and I don't know if I do for the specific because I'm in the demo, but basically you have a 0 here and you do a stock take. So you basically go to process, count inventory. When, let's say, theoretically, it says that you have 5 quantities on hand, but you actually have 10. But theoretically you have nothing on hand. I have to get the scenarios correct. I should have known you would ask me this question. I do apologize. So you have nothing on hand, but now you've gone and you've counted and you're like, oh, I have 5. But average cost is sitting at 0. You now enter the 5, but guess how it writes it? It writes it at absolutely nothing. So now you do your valuation and it says you have 5 beautiful teapots and they cost nothing. That is the other reason, and that happens a lot at year end. A lot of people don't, and that's what I said, guys. It's not a case of, you know, you messed up. Yes, ticking that option, not the best thing to have ticked. But the reason that it happens is most people don't understand what it means because it just looks so innocent and it looks so inviting. It's like, oh, I know Pastel uses average cost. That's why I can use last cost. This is a brilliant option. And you've got items that actually should have an average cost on your item, on your floor, but the system theoretically thinks that you have 0. It happens. And you do a count inventory, but you've ticked that option and you now enter the actual amount you have, whether it's 2, 5, 3, and it brings it in at 0. That is going to have a very negative impact on your valuation. But your control actually did bring those items in. Your control brought them in at what they were. And that's where that is actually quite a big problem during year end. But guys, again, for those of you who have this, if it's not just a little bit of an issue, then you need to obviously, one, check those things. If I mentioned additional costs and you go, oh, I know I do that, and you know that you do return and debits, you're going to have to go and sit and audit your books. And no, guys, it's not something we do. Even if you phone support and you go, hi, sorry, I have this. Can someone look at my books? Guys, the reason we don't do that is that we are not accountants. I never should have done it. I did it because the client was desperate, but it opened up a world of things that I had to explain to the client, and it's the reason I won't do it again. I am not an accountant. I did not study accountancy. I do not have a CA. And if any of the information I gave them is incorrect, that could lead to a SARS audit. In this regard, if you know that you do that and you're like, okay, this could be like years of work, you need to go to your accountant. You need to explain to them what happened and they need to link the things up. They need to check your goods received notes against your supplier invoices, against the return and debits, against the additional cost invoices, and see, okay, what should have been returned, what shouldn't have been returned, what are the differences, and they will give you those things. So that is the one. The other is checking, did you maybe do a count inventory when your actual average cost was 0 because you took that item and you have items that actually were not 0 and you've now brought them into the system at a 0 cost. So check your valuation and see, do you have 0 value for items? That's a problem. And then obviously checking the variances between the things. For the rest, guys, please phone support. They can absolutely just assist you, or email support@sage.com. They can absolutely answer that as well. I think those are most of the reasons, but there could be 1 or 2 that I've missed. I do apologize if I have. Okay, so guys, I've been asked if I could do another webinar, because obviously this has gone very over, on inventory, but on advanced inventory. So showing you how the stock take works and showing you inventory cleanup. I can do that, but it probably won't be anytime soon. But I think that that's actually a very good idea. I was hoping to get through more. I obviously remember this webinar as being a lot shorter, it seems. I use inventory codes when processing supplier invoices and you receive discounts. Can you see the percentage or amount discount when viewing inventory history? Okay, so guys, I don't think that you can see it on our standard reports, but there is something called Sage Intelligence. And I strongly advise that if you view all of these reports and it's not there, then what you want to do is you want to run your intelligent reporting. Now you can try your inventory master. I am not 100% sure if it will do what you want, but alternatively, there are report writers who can write a report with exactly the information that you need. The information that you've asked for does exist in the system, but you may need a report writer to write it for you. Alternatively, there is something called Export 32, which a lot of people don't know about. And it looks like this. I would have to see if it can export what you're looking for. It normally exports it to Excel. Now, what this does is this Export 32 accesses your master files. And you can then select a company. You are going to need to put in the password to open that company. And basically, it then is going to give you all of your master files. So you are going to have to look here and you're going to have to go, okay, what do I need to see here? So you may need, for example, your inventory master or what we call your multi-store transaction file. So your multi-store transaction file is a file where all of your information writes to. And then here you can basically select, okay, I need to see my item code and I want to see, and you can see the different options here. I don't know if this is going to show you exactly what you're looking for. Alternatively, considering this is to suppliers, this information that you're actually looking for may be in your transaction file, which is the brain of your system. I think it's called ledger transaction. And you can try looking through the ledger transaction and actually seeing, okay, this is what I'm looking for, but bearing in mind, this is going to give you a huge amount of information. And here you can see, for example, discount flag. So this could be the other place you can go. See if going through these different options. So for example, the header or the footer. So often there's also header lines or history lines and history headers. Those are your documents. You may want to look through these and actually see these. So go through the history header, then go through the history lines. That might be more what you're looking for. So those would be the four that I would look at. I would probably start with history lines, then try history header, then try supplier, and then try your transaction or your multi-store. You can try this. You may have to play around quite a bit. You would then tick the options that you want, and then you need to choose where you want to create a Excel spreadsheet to. It will dump that information in an Excel spreadsheet, and you can analyze that spreadsheet. As I said, alternatively, you can go to Sage Intelligence. So guys, this is the Sage Intelligence site. You can go to your resources and you can go to additional reports. There's a good chance that maybe a report has already been written for you. So here you can see your Sage Pastel Intelligence reporting. And then guys, from here you can see which intelligence reports you want to get, you want to import. Alternatively, as I said, you can go and hire one of the report writers. Yes, they are going to charge you, but they can write a report exactly to your specifications. Please, however, make sure that it does say Sage 50 Pastel. Please not just Sage 50. So guys, Sage 50, we have they normally say USA version, but there is a Sage 50 USA Canadian version as well as ours. So you're looking for Sage 50 Pastel. You're welcome to reach out to one of our report writers and say to them, this is what I'm looking for, how much would you charge me? And they will custom write a report for you. So there is that option. Okay. Okay, then guys, I've been asked, how can you delete inventory items? So guys, firstly, in order to delete an inventory item, it cannot have history for at least 2 years. So if you know that you've got history within your inventory, you have to go and block it, and you have to block it for at least 2 years. You will then have to do something. So I did do a webinar on this called company management, and part of that was how to delete history, because you'll need to delete that history, and once you've deleted that history, then you can delete your items. So if you've actually got history in an item, you're not going to be able to delete it. I just want to see, hopefully. Okay, so this is part of a kit code that is bill of materials. Most of these are part of a kit code, but normally it comes up and goes, there's transactional history, you cannot delete this. In this instance, you would select block. Then guys, I strongly advise that you all are on the latest version of Pastel, which is Sage 50cloud, Pastel accounting, and the build is 1933. And the reason for that is because before Sage 50, you could not delete inactive inventory items as a whole. You would have to do them one by one. So you would have to go edit inventory item file, delete. And if there was no history, it would delete. And you would have to go next, delete, next, delete. It is very time consuming. With Sage 50 Cloud, you have an assistant. You can run the assistant. It will ask you to create an account. Inactive date before. Now here you don't need to delete the history, but you do need to advise the inactive date, and it cannot fall within the current financial year. So if it falls in the current financial year, it will not allow you to delete those items. There you will have to block them. If a year has run, you can run this assistant. You'll say next. It'll check what items can be deleted. It will tell you these are the items that can be deleted, so deletable. You would then select them and you would say next, and it would delete them. Simple as that. So they have to, guys, firstly, there are a number of things. Has to have 0 quantities. So your item has to have 0 quantities. All stores. So if you're in multi-stores, you cannot have stores with quantities. So you have to have 0 quantities on all stores. So if you go to activity, it all has to be 0. Every single store. That's the first thing. The second thing is no history in the current year. You cannot delete so it can't have history in the current year, and you cannot delete anything from the current year. It has to be inactive from the previous year, and then you can run the assistant. Otherwise, guys, you will need to delete history. You will need to block them, wait 2 years, delete the history, and then delete them one by one by literally coming here, going delete next, delete next. Hence why I say be on Sage 50 Cloud. Saves you a lot of time. There is also a video on how to delete history on YouTube. You are welcome to go and see that, and inventory items. The most practical way to update your inventory prices would be to go to Edit, Inventory, and Adjust Selling Prices. So guys, a lot of people do import their selling prices. It depends on whether the prices change drastically, or whether, honestly, it depends how many prices you have to update, and whether it's a percentage or whether it's just random different numbers. Excel and importing can work really, really well. It's really, really easy if you get the layout correct. Otherwise, going here and selecting one of these. So you can adjust and or round selling prices, including markup, GP percentage on cost. You can adjust and or round multiple price lists at the same time. Here's where you copy the price list from one to the other. So if you have the future prices, this would be the one that you would use. You'd then just copy to the future price, but what that would do is that would take the old price and put it as a future price. You would then need to go and update the future prices yourselves. Oh, sorry, that's copy one to all. The next one is copy all future prices. My apologies. So this is just to go, so say you do retail and then you know that wholesale is 10% less than retail. You can literally copy retail to wholesale and then just mark it down, for example. Then you copy the future prices, that's the third one, and then you can run a price changeover. So the price changeover, copy all current price lists to future prices, and then adjust and or round, so you want to make changes, or run a price changeover, which will just copy the future prices to the current prices and all prices to future prices. So if you've set up future prices, you can just run that, or you can copy the future prices, but allow you to now make changes. So either round up, round down, change them a little bit. So these two are basically your future prices. This is to copy one to all or to multiples and then adjust them. And this is just to adjust. And using these options, I find that it's quite quick and easy. Normally I use this for percentages. So like here, I'll go, oh, here you can see that it's multiples. I can do all of them if I want, or I can do one, or I can do two. I can then choose if I adjust, round, or adjust and round, and what I'm working on, inclusive, exclusive. And then I can choose, is it the selling price, the last cost, or the average cost? So I might go, you know what, I actually want to increase my selling price by 10%. So here it's not going to work obviously on my gross profit margin or my markup on cost. Now it's just going to go add 10% to the selling prices, done. If I do last cost though, or average cost, I can then go, I need 10% gross profit margin. So that's what I'm working on, or I need 50% gross profit margin, or I want 50% markup on cost. So that will only work with average cost and last cost. Selling price, it's just the percentage. So you may have an 8% increase or a 10% increase across the bar. This is by far the easiest, and then you can round if you need to. You don't have to, but then you need to read how you round. So it normally rounds in cents to the nearest 20 cents, 40 cents, 60 cents, 80 cents, or 1 rand, for example. So it's entirely up to you. It goes in increments of basically, you don't have to do 20, guys. You can also do 0.05, which is the nearest 5 cents, or 0.010. It's entirely up to you. And then process. And basically it'll add the 10% round at the same time. If I start again, I can copy. And here would be me literally going, okay, I've done that. And the blue is the one that you are copying to. So I want to, prices to copy, sorry, blue is what you are copying from. So I want to copy from dealers to retail, for example. Again, I can go and adjust them, or select to not adjust at all. And I can know that actually I need an increase 10% on that, or an increase 20%. So guys, this is quite easy and quite simple, but obviously if you're not working in such simplistic terms, you know, yours aren't a 10% across the bar. Yours are a couple of rands here, a couple of rands there. In that case, working in an Excel spreadsheet and using the layout would probably be a better bet. To get the layout, you need to go to Help, Pastel Help, go into your index, type in Export, click on Exporting and Importing Data Overview, say Display. And then guys, at the bottom, you have your layouts. Sorry, I've got all of my stuff from here on there. And you're basically going to go selling prices, and it is going to tell you your layout for partner. So partner, all, and express. and then it will give you the Excel references. Please bear that in mind. Okay, so guys, with regards to the issues with your inventory, you're welcome to get hold of support. You can get hold of support at supportsa@sage.com. That is their email address. You can also, from within your Pastel, use this chat icon. So guys, if you look at my screen, there my chat is. It's going to open up the live chat into your name. Provide an email. Where are you going? So here, Pastel Partner Support, submit. You then want to go through to support. It's going to open here, guys. Please read this because it's not compatible with Internet Explorer and Chrome. It is a little bit annoying. We are trying to get this sorted, but if it doesn't work, you may have to actually kind of copy the link. Otherwise, you're going to click on chat. The chat does take a while to pop up. So I've had people go, this doesn't work. Guys, wait for the chat to come. If it doesn't, copy the address into, for example, your Chrome or your Edge. And then here you're going to enter your details and start the chat. Now that's going to take away from you guys. So I'm not going to start the chat, guys, because I don't want someone who's waiting to get assistance to now be further back in the queue. So you can do that. They'll definitely be able to assist you. Then, guys, with regards to unlinking inventory from stores, I will do in the multi-store. I will do that in the multi-store webinar. I do think that we are mostly out of time. I do think that there is information on the KB. So remember, I spoke about the KB here. You are welcome to go to the KB. I realize that the specific webinar I'll have to cut up into 3 in future. I do apologize. And from here, I'm sure that you can, okay. Do we have no information? Oh, there we go. Please put a space between multi-stores in case it did that as well. How do I import? Okay, setting up. How do I create? How do I set up and use? It could be in this one. I didn't create all of these. But there's definitely quite a bit of information here. Otherwise, if you want to wait until everyone's out, I'm happy to quickly advise. But I just need to check that all of the other questions are done. Guys, hopefully I've answered all of the questions. I think that I have. If you still do have a question that I have not answered, please send it through to me now. Otherwise, guys, I think that's where we're going to need to leave it for today because we've actually been going for 2 hours. So this was an incredibly long session. I do apologize. The last time I ran this, it honestly only was an hour, but I don't think people ask the questions that you guys have. So I will definitely look at answering the questions that I haven't answered. But the rest of you, thank you for joining me. Next week, we are doing, I think it's customers or it could be the general ledger, or not next week, in 2 weeks time. So guys, you're welcome to join me then. Guys, I'm basically going to start calling these overviews. So I think maybe calling it everything about was a problem. And I think that I'm going to call it overviews and setting up. So I do apologize about that. But any other questions that you have, guys, please send them through to me now using the question icon at the right-hand side. If I haven't answered you, and I'll be happy to answer that. Guys, if you have questions specifically for support, I will need you to get hold of support at supportsa@sage.com. If you have questions about the webinar specifically, so you know, you want maybe previous recordings. I did forget to record some of the very early ones. I do apologize, but I will send you what I have. So maybe you want some of the recordings, or there's something specific that you need, you're welcome to email me directly, joanne.barnard@sage.com. But guys, please, only questions about the webinars themselves. Anything support related, go through to support, because sometimes it does take me a while to answer and I don't want you to not get a response. Otherwise, I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day for those of you that are going to leave right now. And hopefully this was informative. And I will look at running another one that's a bit more in depth into the advanced side of things, and definitely on the add-on modules as well. So we might need to run a few of those, but I will keep you guys updated. Otherwise, guys, have a great day and enjoy. For those of you who still need answers, please let me know. Post your answers for the one about the delinking stores. I will explain that quickly, but if it doesn't work, you may need to go through to support. So basically, when you delink stores, firstly, you have to make sure that the store has 0 quantity. You can't delink items from a store when they're quantities. So if you go edit inventory item file, it's very much like actually deleting an item. You actually need to come in and you need to check the activity. You can see that this has 26, which means that I'm going to have to do an inter-store transfer, and I'm going to have to move these to whatever the main store will be, for example, Joburg. So in this case, sorry. So here I'm going to do my inter-store transfer, and we need to transfer this from Cape Town to Johannesburg. We need to choose when we're doing this. And then I can see what the quantity is here. And your quantity has to be 0. You have no choice. And basically you would then update that batch. And as long as the quantity is 0, then you should be able to delink the store. Okay, it could be that I did my year end after this, but basically then you would be able to come in here and you should, as you can see, Durban branch has no quantities, and that's how you basically delink. Yes, you can also do it through the, you know, as a huge batch by going to edit inventory stores and then actually link inventory, and you can deselect the inventory, but you've got to make sure that they are all 0 and that there's no history past the date of you actually removing the items. So making the quantity 0, even if you're negatives, should be the last thing that you do. So I probably should have done that the 31st of March, and then you should be able to delink it from the stores, but they have to have 0 quantities. Okay. Okay, guys, this webinar is recorded, and yes, it will absolutely be emailed to you. If it is not emailed to you, you please need to let me know. It is, however, a 2-hour and counting recording, so I do apologize. Yeah, I've sent you my email. It's there. Do we have to change the unit price every time we have a new? invoice price? No, you don't. So remember when we set up, if you go here, you can choose to change while invoicing, which means that no, you don't have to change it. So while it's a good idea so that it's correct, if you choose not to, but you choose to change while invoicing, basically that means that as you invoice, you can just enter the costs as you need to, or you can enter the prices as you need to. So a lot of the time people don't even set up their prices, they leave it exactly like this. And if I had to now go and do an invoice, it'll enter what is on the system, but I can change it. So no, not at all. Just remember that your customers, whether you use exclusive or inclusive, is set up on your edit customer accounts. Does that help answer your question? Okay, so guys, to my knowledge, I think that I've answered everything. If not, you are, as I said, welcome to email me. I do hope that the session was at least informative and that you learned a couple of tips and tricks, things that maybe you didn't know before. Okay, so guys, sorry, I do have something here where it's asked about report writers. I don't know any of the report writers personally, but I do know Mike is pretty good. So I'll send you his email now. Hopefully that works. So guys, I don't have direct contact with the report writers. So Mike is one of them. I'm just trying to see here. To my knowledge, he's fairly good. And try Meg. So there are a few actually here. I know that I've sent you Mike. Mike is probably the only person that I'm actually fully aware of. I'm not sure if he's still doing it. I spoke to him years ago, but otherwise I would go onto this specific page and you can get the email addresses for the consultants from there. To my knowledge, yes, it does affect POS with regards to the change while invoicing. Okay, so guys, where and how is GP set up? I'm not sure if I did answer that, but you set up the GP limit. So I'm just checking which still has question marks next to it. So I may have answered, I may not. I may have answered verbally. You go to setup, inventory. And this is where you can set up a limit. So minimum gross profit. So this is the minimum that can be set. There is no maximum though. So if you don't want to go over a percentage, that you're going to have to manage, but you can make sure that whoever's entering your price lists does not go below a certain limit. So you would set that there. And then how you check your GP percentage is when you actually enter your prices. That will give you the percentage as well as the amount. So that's on the price list tab.